I told you it'd be soon, and this is soon. I'm here to read chapters 6 through 10 of Warriors Into the Wild. Let's get started, shall we? Early morning sunlight streamed down onto the forest floor as Firepaw roamed in search of prey. 2 moons had passed since he had begun his training. He felt at ease in this environment now. His senses had awoken and educated in the ways of the woods. Firepaw paused to sniff the earth and the cold, blind things that moved within it. He caught the scent of a 2-leg that had wandered the forest recently. Now that Greenleaf was fully here, leaves were thick on the branches and tiny creatures were busy beneath a carpet of leaf mold. Firepaw made a lean, strong shape as he moved silently through the trees, all his senses alert for the scent trail that would end in a swift kill. Today he had been sent on his first solo task. He was determined to do well, even if his task was only to bring back fresh kill for the clan. He headed for the stream that he had crossed on that first trek through ThunderClan hunting grounds. It gurgled and spattered as it ran downhill over the smooth, round pebbles. Firepaw paused briefly to lap at the cold, clear water, then lifted his head and tasted the air again for any scent of prey. The stench of a fox lay heavy in the air here. The smell was stale, so the fox must have drunk here earlier in the day. Firepaw recognized the odor. He had smelled it on his first visit to the forest. Since then, Lionheart had taught him it was fox scent, but apart from the glimpse of the fox's brush he had caught on that first outing, Firepaw had still never seen one properly. He struggled to screen out the fox stench and concentrate on prey scent. Suddenly his whiskers prickled as he honed in on the warm blood beat of prey, a water vole, busy about its nest. A moment later he saw the vole. The fat brown body was darting back and forth along the bank as it gathered grass stalks. Firepaw's mouth watered in anticipation. His last meal had been many hours ago, but he dared not hunt for himself until the clan had been fed. He remembered the words repeated by Lionheart and Tigerclaw time and time again. The clan must be fed first. Dropping into a crouch, Firepaw began to stalk the little creature. His orange belly fur brushed against the damp grass. He crept closer, his eyes never leaving his prey. Almost there. Another moment and he would be near enough to spring. Suddenly there was a loud rustle in the ferns behind him. The water vole's ears twitched and it disappeared down a hole in the bank. Firepaw felt the hackles rising along his spine. Whatever had ruined his first good chance of catching prey would have to pay. He sniffed the air. He could tell it was a cat, but he realized with a jolt that he couldn't identify which clan it belonged to. The stale stench of fox still confused his smell sense. A growl rose in his throat as he began doubling back in a wide circle. He pricked up his ears, and opened his eyes wide, seeking out any movement. He heard the undergrowth rustle again. It was louder now, off to one side. Firepaw edged closer. He could see the ferns moving, but the fronds still hid the enemy from view. A twig snapped with a sharp cracking noise. From the noise it's making, it must be big, Firepaw thought, preparing himself for a fierce battle. He leaped for the trunk of an ash and climbed swiftly and silently up to an overhanging branch. Below him, the invisible warrior came closer, and closer still. Firepaw held his breath, judging his moment as the ferns were pushed aside and a large grayish shape emerged. Grrrr! The battle cry rumbled in Firepaw's throat. Claws unsheathed, he launched himself at the enemy and landed squarely on a set of furry, muscular shoulders. He dug in hard, gripping with thorn-sharp claws, ready to deal out a powerful warning bite. What was that? The body below him shot straight up in the air, carrying him with it. Great Paw! Firepaw recognized the astonished voice and caught his friend's familiar smell. He was too fired up to loosen his grip. Ambush! Meow! Spat Greypaw, not realizing that the gripping onto his back was Firepaw. He rolled over and over in an attempt to dislodge his attacker. Oof! Firepaw rolled with him, squashed and flattened beneath the heavy body. It's me, Firepaw! He yelled as he struggled to pull free sheathed his claws. Rolling away, he sprang to his feet and gave himself a shake, which rippled all the way along his body to the end of his tail. "Graypaw, it's me," he repeated. "I thought you were an enemy warrior." Graypaw rose to his feet. He winced and shook himself. "I felt like it," he grumbled, twisting his head to lick his sore shoulders. "You've raked me to shreds." "Sorry," Firepaw mumbled. "Well, what was I supposed to think, with you creeping up on me like that?" "Creeping up?" Graypaw's eyes were round with indignation. "That was my best stealth crouch." "Stealth? You still stalk like a lopsided badger," Firepaw teased. He flattened his ears playfully. Graypaw gave a hiss of delight. "I'll show you, lopsided." The two cats leaped at each other and began rolling over and over in a play fight. Graypaw swiped at Firepaw with a hefty paw, and the young apprentice's head buzzed with stars. "Ugh!" Firepaw shook his head to clear it, and then launched a counterattack. He managed to get in a couple paw strikes before Graypaw overpowered him and held him down. Firepaw let his body go limp. "You give up too easily," mewed Graypaw, loosening his grip. As he did so, Firepaw sprang to his feet, firing Graypaw off his back and into the undergrowth. Firepaw leaped after him and pinned him to the ground. "Surprise is the warrior's greatest weapon," he crowed, quoting one of Lionheart's favorite phrases. He jumped nimbly off Graypaw and began to squirm around in the leaf litter, enjoying his easy victory in the warmth of the earth against his back. Graypaw seemed unbothered by his second defeat of the morning. It was too fine a day for bad temper. "So how you doing getting on with your task?" he asked. Firepaw sat up. "I was doing just fine until you came along. I was about to catch a vole when your noisy trampling frightened it off." "Oh, sorry," mewed Graypaw. Firepaw looked at his crestfallen friend. "That's okay. You didn't know," he purred. "Anyway," he continued, "shouldn't you be heading to meet the patrol on the WindClan border? I thought you had to give them a message from Blue Star." "Yeah, but there's plenty of time. I was going to do a little hunting first. I'm starving." "Me too, but I've got to hunt for the clan before I can hunt for myself." "I bet Dustpaw and Sandpaw used to swallow a shrew or two when they were on hunting duty," snorted Graypaw. "I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but this is my first solo assignment." "And you want to do it right, I know," Graypaw sighed. "What's the message from Blue Star anyway?" Firepaw asked, changing the subject. "She wants to patrol the wait at the Great Sycamore, I always say it's Skymore, until she joins them at Sunhigh. She seems that some Shadow Clan cats have been prowling around. Blue Star wants to check things out." "You'd best get going then," Firepaw reminded him. "The WindClan hunting grounds aren't too far from here. There's plenty of time," answered Graypaw confidently. "And I suppose I should help out after losing you that vole." "It doesn't matter," Firepaw mewed. "I'll find another. It's such a warm day. There should be quite a few out and about." "True. But you still have to catch 'em." Graypaw nibbled at a front claw, stripping off a piece of the outer sheath thoughtfully. "You know, that could take you until way past Sunhigh. Maybe even until sunset." Firepaw nodded without enthusiasm as his belly gave a rumble. He would probably have to make 3 or 4 hunting trips before he had caught enough prey. Silverpelt would be in the sky before he got a chance to eat. Graypaw stroked his whiskers. "Come on, I'll help you get started. I owe you that at least. We should be able to catch a couple of voles before I have to get going." Firepaw followed Graypaw upstream, glad of the company and the help. A fox stench was still in the air, but suddenly it smelled stronger. Firepaw paused. "Can you smell that?" he asked. Graypaw stopped and sniffed in the air too. "Fox. Yeah, I smelled it earlier." "Doesn't it smell fresher to you now, though?" Firepaw asked. Graypaw sniffed again, and opened his mouth slightly. "You're right," he murmured, lowering his voice. He swiveled his head to look across the stream at the bushes in the woods beyond. "Look!" he whispered. Firepaw looked. He saw something red and thick-haired moving among the bushes. It stepped into a clearing in the undergrowth, and Firepaw saw a low body, glinting red in the dappled sunlight. Its tail was heavily furred, and it had a long, narrow snout. "So that's a fox?" Firepaw whispered. "What an ugly muzzle!" "You could say that again," agreed Graypaw. I was following one of those when we first met, whispered Firepaw. More likely it was following you, you idiot, hissed Graypaw. Never trust a fox. Looks like a dog, behaves like a cat. We must warn the queens that one has strayed into our territory. Foxes are as bad as badgers when it comes to killing young kids. I'm just glad he didn't catch up with the one he saw last time. He'd have made mouse meat out of a tiny scrap like you. Firepaw looked a little put out, and Graypaw added, You stand a better chance these days, though. Anyway, Blue Star will probably send a warrior to scare it off. Put the queen's mind at rest. The fox had not noticed them, so the two apprentices continued along the stream. So what does a badger look like? Firepaw asked as it prowled along, sniffing to either side. Black and white, short legs. You'll know one when you meet one. They're bad-tempered, lumbering animals. They're less likely to raid the nursery than a fox, but they have a vicious bite. How do you think old Halftail earned his name? He hasn't been able to climb a tree since a badger bit his tail off. Why not? Scared of falling. A cat needs his tail if he wants to land on his feet. It helps him spin in midair. Firepaw nodded in understanding. As Firepaw had predicted, hunting was good that day. Before long, Graypaw had pounced on a small mouse, and Firepaw had caught a thrush. He quickly took its life. No time to practice killing techniques today. There were too many hungry mouths waiting back at camp. Firepaw kicked earth over the prey so it would be safe from predators until he came back for it. Suddenly a squirrel broke cover. Firepaw burst in action. After it! He called, pelting at full stretch over the springy woodland floor with Graypaw at his heels. They slid to a halt as the squirrel scampered upward into a birch. Lost it! Graypaw growled in disappointment. Panting, the two cats stopped to catch their breath. The acrid stench that hit their mouths and noses surprised them. The Thunder Path, Firepaw mewed. I didn't realize we'd come so far. The two cats edged forward to peer out of the forest at the great dark path. It was the first time they had been here alone. A trail of noisy creatures growled along the hard surface, their dead eyes staring straight ahead. Yuck! Graypaw snorted. Those monsters really stink! Firepaw twitched his ears in agreement. The choking smells made his throat sting. Have you ever been across the Thunder Path? He mewed. Graypaw shook his head. Firepaw took a step out of the cover of the forest. A border of oily grass lay between the trees and the Thunder Path. He crept slowly out onto it and then shrank back as a stinking monster hurled past. Hey, where are you going? Graypaw mewed. Firepaw didn't reply. He waited there till there were no monsters in sight. Then he edged forward again, across the grass, right to the edge of the path. Cautiously, he reached out a paw to touch it. It felt warm, almost sticky, heated by the sun. He looked up, staring across the Thunder Path. Was that a pair of eyes glinting out of the forest on the other side? He sniffed the air, but smelled nothing except the stench of the great gray path. The eyes on the other side were still shining in the shadows. Then they blinked, slowly. Firepaw was sure now. It was the Shadow Clan warrior, and he was staring straight at him. Firepaw! Graypaw's voice made Firepaw jump, just as a huge monster, taller than a tree, roared past his nose. The wind from it almost toppled him over. Firepaw turned and ran as fast as he could back into the safety of the forest. You mouse-brained fool! Spat Graypaw. His whiskers trembled with fear and anger. What were you doing? I just wondered what the Thunder Path felt like, Firepaw muttered. His whiskers were trembling too. Come on! Firepaw hissed Graypaw edgily. Let's get out of here! Firepaw followed Graypaw as he leaped away back into the forest. Once they were a safe distance from the Thunder Path, Graypaw stopped to catch his breath. Firepaw sat down and began to lick his ruffled fur. I think I saw a Shadow Clan warrior, he mewed between licks, in the forest on the other side of the Thunder Path. A Shadow Clan warrior? Echoed Graypaw, his eyes wide. Really? I'm pretty sure. Well, it's a good thing that monster came past when it did, retorted Graypaw. When there's one Shadow Clan warrior, there's more, and we're no match for them yet. We better get out of here. He looked up at the sun, which was almost directly overhead. I better get a move on if I want to meet that patrol on time, he mewed. See you later. He sprang away into the undergrowth, calling as he went. You never know. Lionheart might let me come and help you with hunting once I've delivered this message. Firepaw watched him go. He envied Graypaw, wishing he were off to join a warrior patrol. But at least he'd have something to tell Dustpaw and Sandpaw when he returned to camp. Today he had seen his first Shadow Clan warrior. I've toned down Graypaw's southern accent. Yeehaw! Don't you know what you're doing, mate? Chapter 7. Firepaw retraced his steps and headed back toward the stream. He thought of those eyes burning from the darkness of the Shadow Clan territory. Suddenly he caught a faint smell on the breeze. A stranger! Perhaps that Shadow Clan warrior. Instantly a growl rumbled in Firepaw's throat. The scent message told him many things. The stranger was a she-cat, not young and definitely not from ThunderClan. She carried no distinct scent from any of the clans, but Firepaw could still tell she was tired, hungry, and sick, and she was in an ugly mood. Dropping low, Firepaw moved forward, heading toward the scent. Then he paused in puzzlement. The warrior scent was fainter now. He sniffed again. Suddenly, with a lightning movement, a snarling ball of fur burst from the bushes behind him. Firepaw screeched in shock as the she-cat slammed into him, knocking him sideways. Two heavy paws clamped down onto his shoulders, and iron jaws closed around the back of his neck. "Meow!" he grunted, already thinking fast. If the other cat were to sink its fangs too deep, it would be all over. He forced himself to go limp, relaxing his muscles as if in submission, and let out a pretend howl of alarm. The she-cat opened her mouth to give a triumphant yowl. "Ah, a puny apprentice, easy prey for Yellowfang," she hissed. At the insult, Firepaw felt a surge of fury. Just wait. He'd showed this cough of furball what kind of warrior he was. But not yet, he told himself. Wait until you feel her teeth again. Yellowfang bit down. Firepaw surged upward with all the strength in his powerful young body. She gave a snarl of surprise as she was thrown clear. She tumbled backward into a gorse bush. Firepaw shook himself. Not such easy prey, huh? Yellowfang hissed defiance as she tore herself free from the clinging branches. Not bad, young apprentice, she spat back, but you'll need to do a lot better. Firepaw blinked when he saw his opponent clearly for the first time. The she-cat had a broad, almost flat face and round orange eyes. Her dark gray fur was long and matted into smelly clumps. Her ears were torn and ragged, and her muzzle was traced with the scars of many old battles. Firepaw stood his ground. He puffed out his chest and glared a challenge into the intruder's face. You're in ThunderClan's hunting ground. Move on. Who's going to make me? Yellowfang drew back her lip defiantly, exposing stained and broken teeth. I will hunt, then I will leave. Or maybe I'll just stay a while. Enough talk. Firepaw spat, feeling the stir of ancient cat spirits deep inside him. There was no trace of house cat in him now. His warrior blood was up. He was itching to fight, to defend his territory and protect his clan. Yellowfang seemed to sense the change in him. Her fierce orange eyes sparked with new respect. Dipping her head and breaking eye contact, she started to back off. No need to be hasty now, she purred in a silky tone. Firepaw wasn't fooled by her trickery. Claws extended, fur on end. He leaped forward, his war cry ringing out. Grrrr! That's a good war cry. With a hiss of rage, the other cat responded. Snarling and spitting, the young cat and old locked together. They rolled over and over, teeth and claws flashing. Ears pressed flat to his head, Firepaw fought to get a grip. But the she-cat's clumpy fur snagged in his claws, and he couldn't break through to skin. Then Yellowfang reared up on her back legs. With her filthy tail bristling, she looked even bigger. Firepaw sensed Yellowfang's huge jaws lunging toward him. He leaned backward just in time. Snap! Bared teeth closed on the air next to his ear. Instinctively, Firepaw lashed out with a backswipe. His paw caught the side of Yellowfang's head. The force of it sent shock waves up his front leg. Yow! Stunned, Yellowfang dropped onto four paws. She shook her head to clear it. In the single heartbeat before the she-cat recovered, Firepaw saw his chance. He threw himself forward, crouching low, and clamped his jaws tight on Yellowfang's back leg. Urgh. The taste of the matted fur was horrible, but he chopped down hard. Yow, 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 yow! Yellowfang screamed in agony and whipped around to snap at Firepaw's tail. Her teeth connected and pain lanced up Firepaw's spine, but it only made him angrier. He ripped his tail from his opponent's grip and lashed it back and forth in rage. Yellowfang crouched, ready for a fresh attack. Her breath seemed to wheeze up from her foul-smelling lungs. Is this like a smoker homeless person? What the fuck? The scent blasted up Firepaw's nose. Up close, the message of desperation and weakness, and the aching void of the she-cat's hunger, was almost painful. Something stirred inside him, an unwarrior-like feeling he didn't want. Pity. He tried not to dwell on this instinct. He knew his loyalty must be to his clan, but he couldn't shake free of it. You speak from your heart, young Firepaw. Lionheart's words echoed in his head once more. This will make you a strong warrior one day. Then Tigerclaw's warning rang in his ears. Or it might make him give in to kitty pet weakness right at the moment of attack. Yellowfang lunged forward, and Firepaw jerked instantly back into aggression. The bigger cat tried to reach up onto his shoulders and get a killing grip, but this time she was hammered by her wounded leg. Gruff! Firepaw arched his spine, but Yellowfang managed to dig in her claws and hung on tight. The bigger cat's weight forced him to the ground. Firepaw tasted earth on his tongue and spouted a mouthful of grit. Puh! He twisted nimbly to avoid Yellowfang's thrashing back legs and the thorn-sharp claws that were trying to rake at his soft underbelly. Over and over they rolled, biting and snapping. Moments later they broke apart. Firepaw was gasping for breath now, but he sensed that Yellowfang was weakening. The she-cat was badly wounded, and her back legs could barely support her scrawny body. Had enough yet? Firepaw growled. If the intruder gave way, he let her go with just a warning bite to remember him by. Never! Yellowfang hissed back bravely, but her injured leg gave way and she slumped to the ground. She tried to get up and failed. Her eyes were dull as she hissed up at Firepaw. If I weren't so hungry and tired, I'd have shredded you into mouse dust. The she-cat's mouth twisted in pain and defiance. Finish me off. I won't stop you. Firepaw hesitated. He'd never killed another cat before. Perhaps in the heat of battle he would, but a mercy killing in cold blood, this was something very different. What are you waiting for? Yellowfang taunted. You're dithering like a kitty pet. Firepaw smarted at the she-cat's word. Could she smell the scent of two legs on him, even now, after all this time? I'm an apprentice warrior of ThunderClan, he snapped. Yellowfang narrowed her eyes. She'd seen Firepaw flinch at her words and knew she'd hit a nerve. Ha! She snorted. Don't tell me ThunderClan is so desperate they have to recruit kitty pets now. ThunderClan is not desperate, hissed Firepaw. Prove it then. Act like a warrior and finish me off. You'll be doing me a favor. Firepaw stared at her. He would not be goaded into killing this miserable creature. He felt his muscles relax as curiosity pricked him. How had a clan cat gotten in such a state? ThunderClan elders were looked at better than kits. You seem to be in an awful hurry to die, he meowed. Yeah, well that's my business, mouse fodder, Yellowfang snapped. What's your problem, kitty? Are you trying to talk me to death? Her words were brave, but Firepaw could smell the hunger and sickness that were coming off the other cat in waves. She was going to die anyway if she didn't eat soon, and since she could hardly hunt for herself, perhaps he should kill her now. The two cats looked at each other, uncertainty in both their gazes. Wait here, Firepaw ordered at last. Yellowfang seemed to deflate. Her ankles smoothed out and her tail lost its gorse bush stiffness. Are you kidding, kitty? I'm not going anywhere, she grunted, limping painfully toward its patch of soft heather. She flopped down and began licking her leg wound. Firepaw glanced briefly over his shoulder at her and hissed quietly in exasperation before heading for the trees. As he padded silently through the ferns, sun-warmed odors filled his nose, and he caught the sour reek of a long-dead rat. He heard the scratching of insects beneath bark, the rustle of furry things scurrying over leaves. His first thought had been to go and dig up the thrush he had killed earlier, but that would take too long. Maybe he should go and scoop up the rat carcass. Easy meat, but a starving cat needed fresh kill. Only when times were very hard would a warrior eat crow food. Just then he paused, scenting a young rabbit ahead. A few more steps and he saw it. Flying himself down, he stalked the creature. He was barely a mouse length away before it detected him. By then it was too late. The white bobtail darting away sent the thrill of the chase surging through Firepaw's veins. A rush of speed, a flash of claws, and he had it. He held the wriggling body fast and finished it off quickly. Yellowfang looked up tiredly as Firepaw dropped the rabbit on the ground beside her. Grizzled jaw dropped. Well, hello again, Kitty. I thought you'd gone to fetch your little warrior friends. Yeah, well, I might still do that. And don't call me Kitty. Firepaw growled, shoving the rabbit nearer with his nose. He felt embarrassed by his kindness. Look, if you don't want this... Ah, no. Yellowfang meowed hastily. I do want it. Firepaw watched the she-cat rip open the prey and start to swallow it down. His own hunger rose up in his mouth filled with water. He knew he shouldn't even be thinking about eating. He still had to take back enough prey for his clan, but the fresh kill smelled delicious. A few minutes later, Yellowfang gave a huge sigh and flopped onto her side. First fresh kill I've had it for days. She licked her muzzle clean and sat down to give herself a thorough wash. As if one wash is going to make much difference, Firepaw thought, his nose twitching. She was the arch-cat of stench. He eyed the tattered remnants of the prey. There wasn't much left to line a cat's belly, but his fight with Yellowfang had sharpened his appetite even more. He gave in to his hunger and gulped down the scraps. It was delicious. He licked his lips, savoring every last taste, tingling from head to paw. Yellowfang watched him closely, showing her stained teeth. Better than the muck. Two Legs feeds some of our brothers, isn't it? She mewed slyly, knowing she had found his sore spot. She was trying to antagonize him. Firepaw ignored her and began to wash. It's poison, Yellowfang went on. Rat droppings. Only a spineless bag of fur would accept such disgusting frog spawn. She broke off and tensed. Shh, warrior's coming. Firepaw was also aware of cats approaching. He could hear their soft paw fall on the leaf litter and the sound of fur swishing through branches. He smelled the wind brushing against their coats. Familiar smells. These were ThunderClan warriors, confident enough in their own territory not to care about the noise they made. Firepaw licked his lips guiltily, hoping to wash away any trace of the scraps he'd just swallowed. Then he looked at Yellowfang in the fresh pile of rabbit bones that lay beside her. The clan must be fed first! Lionheart's voice rang through his head once more. But surely he would understand why Firepaw had fed this wretched creature. His mind reeled, suddenly fearful of what would happen to him. His first apprentice task, and he had ended up breaking the warrior code. Alright, so he's in big trouble now. But, you might have noticed that I put on the accent very lightly, or the tone very lightly, when it's just in his head. I try to combine the voices when it's in their head. But, yeah, Chapter 8, let's go. Yellowfang growled in defiance at the approaching Paw steps, but Firepaw could sense her panic. The she-cat struggled to her feet. So long, thanks for the meal. She tried to limp away on 3 legs and then winced in pain. This leg stiffened up while I've been resting. Now it was too late for her to run. Silent shadows slipped out of the trees, and in a heartbeat the ThunderClan patrol had encircled Firepaw and Yellowfang. Firepaw recognized them. Terraclaw, Darkstripe, Willowpaw, and Bluestar, all of them lean and hard-muscled. Firepaw smelled Yellowfang's fear at the sight of them. Greypaw followed close behind. He bounded out of the bushes and stood behind the warrior patrol. Firepaw mewed a hasty greeting to his clan, but only Greypaw returned it. Hi, Firepaw, he called out. Silence! Terraclaw growled. Firepaw glanced at Yellowfang and groaned inwardly. He could still smell the fear scent on her, but instead of cowering submission, the scruffy creature was glaring in defiance. Firepaw? Bluestar's question was cool and measured. What have we here? An enemy warrior, and recently fed, by the smell of you both. Her eyes burned into him, and Firepaw dropped his head. She was weak and hungry, he began. And what about you? Was your hunger so bad that you had to feed yourself before you had gathered prey for your clan? Bluestar went on. I assume that you have a very good reason for breaking the warrior code. Firepaw was not fooled by the leader's soft tone. Bluestar was furious, and rightly so. He crouched lower to the ground. Before he could speak, there was a loud hiss from Terraclaw. Once a kitty pet, always a kitty pet. Blue Star ignored Tireclaw and looked instead at Yellowfang. Suddenly she looked surprised. "Well, well, Firepaw, it seems you have captured us a ShadowClan cat, and one I know well. You are ShadowClan's medicine cat, aren't you?" She meowed to Yellowfang. "What are you doing so far into ThunderClan territory?" "I was the ShadowClan medicine cat. Now I choose to travel alone," hissed Yellowfang. Firepaw listened, astonished. Had he heard right? Yellowfang was a ShadowClan warrior. Her filthy condition must have masked her territorial scent. He might have enjoyed tackling her more if he'd known. "Yellowfang," Tireclaw meowed mockingly, "it looks like you have fallen into hard times if you can be beaten by an apprentice." Now Darkstripe spoke. "This old cat is no use to us. Let us kill her now. As for this kitty pet, he has broken the warrior code by feeding an enemy warrior. He should be punished." "Keep your claws in, Darkstripe," Blue Star purred calmly. "All the clans speak of Yellowfang's bravery and wisdom. It may help us to hear what she has to say. Come, we'll take her back to camp. Then we'll decide what to do with her. And with Firepaw." "Can you walk?" she asked Yellowfang. "Or do you need help?" "I've still got 3 good legs," the grizzled she-cat snapped back, limping forward. Firepaw saw that Yellowfang's eyes were glazed with pain, but she seemed determined not to show any weakness. He noticed a look of respect flicker across Blue Star's face before the ThunderClan leader turned and slowly led the way through the trees. The other warriors took up positions on either side of Yellowfang, and the patrol moved off, carefully keeping the pace with their lame prisoner. "Lame, so lame." Firepaw and Greypaw fell in step together at the back of the group. "Have you heard of Yellowfang?" Firepaw hissed to Greypaw. "A bit. Apparently she was a warrior before she became a medicine cat, which is unusual. I can't imagine her as a loner, though. She has lived her whole life in ShadowClan." "What's a loner?" Greypaw glanced at him. "A loner is a cat that isn't part of a clan or cared for to got 2 legs. Tireclaw says they are untrustworthy and selfish. They often live around 2-legged dwellings, but belong to no one and catch their own food." "I might end up a loner once Blue Star is finished with me," Firepaw mewed. "Blue Star is very fair," Greypaw reassured him. "She won't throw you out. She certainly seems pleased to have such an important ShadowClan cat as a prisoner. I'm sure she's not going to make a fuss about your feeding the poor old main bag." "But they keep moaning about prey being scarce. Oh, why did I eat that rabbit?" Firepaw felt shame burn through his fur. "Well, yeah." Greypaw nudged his friend. "That was mouse-brained. You really broke the warrior code there. But no cat is perfect." Firepaw didn't answer, but trekked onward with a heavy heart. This was not the way he had hoped his first solo task would end. As the patrol passed the sentries who guarded the camp entrance, the rest of ThunderClan came running to welcome their warriors home. Queens, kits, and elders crowded on either side. They peered curiously at Yellowfang as she was led into the camp. Some of the elders recognized the old she-cat. Word spread quickly through the clan that this was ShadowClan's medicine cat, and a steady jeering hum rose up around them. Yellowfang seemed deaf to the taunts. Firepaw couldn't help admiring the way she limped with dignity through the corridor of stares and insults. She knew she was in a great deal of pain and hungry in spite of the rabbit he had caught for her. When the patrol reached the high rock, Blue Star nodded toward the dusty ground in front of it. Yellowfang followed into the ThunderClan leader's silent command, sinking gratefully onto the earth. Still ignoring the hostile stares around her, she began licking her wounded leg. Firepaw noticed Spotted Leaf emerge from her corner. She must have scented the presence of an injured cat in the camp. He watched the crowd part to let the young tortoiseshell through. Yellowfang glared at Spotted Leaf and hissed, "I know how to take care of my own wounds. I don't need your help." Spotted Leaf said nothing but nodded respectfully and stepped back. Some of the cats had been out hunting, and fresh kill was brought for the returning warriors to eat. They each took some food and carried it away to the nettle patch to eat it. Then the other clan cats crowded forward to take their own share. Firepaw paced hungrily around the clearing and watched as the cats crouched in their usual groups, chewing and gulping. He longed for a morsel, but didn't dare to take anything from the pile. He had broken the warrior code. He guessed that this meant he was forbidden his share in the fresh kill. He paused beside the hide rock where Blue Star was sharing words with Tigerclaw. Uncertain, Firepaw looked to his leader for a signal that he was allowed to eat. But the gray cat and her senior warrior were busy murmuring at one another in low tones. Firepaw wondered if they were talking about him. Desperate to know his fate, he strained his ears to hear what they were saying. Tigerclaw's yowl seemed impatient. "It's just too dangerous to bring an enemy warrior into the heart of ThunderClan. Now that she knows the camp, even the youngest ShadowClan kid will hear of it. We have to move." "Calm down, Tigerclaw," Blue Star purred. "Why should we move? Yellowfang says that she is traveling alone now. There's no reason for ShadowClan to hear of it." "Do you really believe that? What on earth was that foolish kitty pet thinking of?" Tigerclaw spat. "But think for a moment, Tigerclaw," meowed Blue Star. "Why would the ShadowClan medicine cat choose to leave her clan? You seem to be afraid that Yellowfang would share her clan secrets with ShadowClan, but have you thought about how many ShadowClan secrets she might share with us?" Firepaw could see by the way Tigerclaw's fur began to flatten that Blue Star's words made sense. The warrior nodded briefly, and then stalked off to take his share of the fresh kill. Blue Star remained where she was. She looked out across the clearing, where some of the younger kids were fighting and tumbling playfully in the dust, then stood up and began to walk toward Firepaw. His heart lurched. What was she going to say to him? But Blue Star walked straight past him. She did not even glance at him. Her eyes were clouded with unknown distant thoughts. "Frostfur!" she called out as she approached the nursery. A pure white cat with dark blue eyes slipped out of the brambles. Inside, the noise of mewing grew louder. "Hush, kids," purred the white cat reassuringly. "I won't be long." Then she turned to her leader. "Yes, Blue Star, what is it?" "One of our apprentices has seen a fox in the area. Warn the other queens to guard the nursery carefully, and make sure all kits less than 6 moons stay inside the camp until the warriors have driven it away." Frostfur nodded. "I will pass on the warning, Blue Star. Thank you." Then she turned and squeezed back into the nursery to quiet the crying kids. Wow, what absolute children, am I right? They cry after their mom is like 6 feet away from them for like 2 seconds. Jesus. Babies are the worst. At last, Blue Star strode over to the pile of fresh kill and took her share. A plump wood pigeon had been left for her there. Firepaw looked on longingly as she carried it away to eat with the senior warriors. Finally, his hunger drove him forward. Graypaw was with Ravenpaw, wolfing down a small finch beside the tree stump. He saw Firepaw approach the pile and flicked his head encouragingly. Firepaw bent his neck, ready to take a small wood mouse in his teeth. "Not for you," Tigerclaw growled, striding up behind him and pawing the mouse away. "You didn't bring back any prey. The elders will eat your share. Take it to them." Firepaw looked over to Blue Star. She nodded shortly. "Do as he says." Obediently, Firepaw picked up the mouse and carried it across the small ear. The delicious smell of it wafted up Firepaw's nose. He wanted nothing more than crunch it up with his strong teeth. He could almost feel its life energy flooding his young body. With great self-control, he laid the prey down in front of the gray tom and then backed away politely. He expected no thanks and was offered none. Now that he was glad that he had gobbled up the remains of the rabbit he had caught for Yellowfang, there'd be nothing else for him to eat until he went out hunting again tomorrow. Firepaw wandered over to Graypaw. His friend had eaten his fill and lay with Ravenpaw outside the apprentice's den. He was stretched out on his side, rhythmically washing a foreleg. Graypaw saw Firepaw approach and paused in his licking. "Has Blue Star mentioned your punishment yet?" he asked. "Not yet," Firepaw replied gloomily. Graypaw narrowed his eyes sympathetically and said nothing. Blue Star's call sounded across the clearing. "Let all those cats old enough to catch their own prey join together for a meeting of our clan." I remember it going a different way, but okay. Most of the warriors had finished eating, and like Graypaw, were busy grooming themselves. They lifted themselves gracefully to their paws and walked over to the high rock, where Blue Star waited to speak. "Come on," yelled Graypaw as he leaped up. Ravenpaw and Firepaw followed him as he scampered over and nudged his way forward into a good position. "I'm sure you've all heard about the prisoner we brought back with us today," Blue Star began, "but there is something else you need to know." She glanced down at the rattled she-cat who lay very still beside the high rock. Can you hear me from there? She asked. I may be old, but I'm not deaf yet, Yellowfang spat in reply. Bluestar ignored the prisoner's hostile tone and continued. I'm afraid I have some very grave news. Today I traveled with a patrol into WindClan territory. The air was filled with the scent of ShadowClan. Almost every tree has been sprayed by ShadowClan warriors, and we met no WindClan cats even though we journeyed deep into their heartland. Her words were met with silence. Firepaw saw confusion in the faces of the clan cats. Do you mean ShadowClan has chased them out? Called Mollier hesitantly. We can't be sure, Bluestar meowed. Certainly the scent of ShadowClan was everywhere. We found blood too, and fur. There must have been a battle, though we found no bodies from either clan. A shocked yowl rose from the cloud in a single voice. Firepaw felt the cats around him stiffen with shock and fury. Never before had one clan driven another from its hunting grounds. How can WindClan have been driven out? One-Eye croaked hoarsely. ShadowClan is fierce, but WindClan is many. They have lived in the uplands for generations. Why have they been chased out now? She shook her head anxiously, her whiskers trembling. I don't know the answers to any of your questions, meowed Bluestar. It is well known that ShadowClan has recently appointed a new leader following the death of Ragged Star. Their new leader, Broken Star, gave no hint of any threat when we met him at the last gathering. Perhaps Yellowfang has answers, snarled Darkstripe. After all, she is of ShadowClan. I am no traitor. Nothing would make me share the secrets of ShadowClan with a brute like you, growled Yellowfang, glaring aggressively at Darkstripe. The ThunderClan warrior moved forward, ears flat, eyes closed to slits, ready for a fight. Stop! Yowled Bluestar. Darkstripe immediately halted in his tracks, even though Yellowfang goaded him on, with blazing eyes and a ferocious hiss. That's enough, Bluestar growled. This situation is too serious for us to be fighting among ourselves. ThunderClan must prepare itself. From this moonrise onward, warriors will travel in larger groups. Other clan members will remain close to the camp. Patrols will travel the boundary edges more frequently, and all the kits must stay in the nursery. The cats below nodded in agreement. Bluestar continued. Our need for warriors is our greatest obstacle. We shall get around this by speeding up the training of our apprentices. They need to be ready even sooner to fight for our clan. Firepaw saw Dustpaw and Sandpaw exchange thrilled glance. Greypaw was gazing up at Bluestar, his eyes wide with excitement. Ravenpaw just shuffled his paws anxiously. The black apprentice's wide eyes showed worry rather than excitement. Bluestar went on. One young cat has been sharing mentors with Greypaw and Ravenpaw. By teaching him, I shall speed up the training of all three apprentices. She paused and looked down at her clan. I shall take on Firepaw as my own apprentice. Firepaw opened his eyes wide in amazement. Bluestar was to be his mentor. Beside him, Greypaw gasped, unable to hide his surprise. What an honor! It's been moons since Bluestar had an apprentice. Usually she only trains only the kits of deputies. Then a familiar voice rose from the front of the crowd. It was Tireclaw. So Firepaw is to be rewarded, not punished, for feeding an enemy warrior when he should have been feeding his own clan. Firepaw is my apprentice now. I will deal with him, answered Bluestar. She stared into Tireclaw's fierce eyes for a moment before lifting her head to address the whole clan once more. Yellowfang will be allowed to stay here until she has recovered her strength. We are warriors, not savages. She is to be treated with respect and courtesy. But the clan cannot support Yellowfang, Darkstripe protested. We have too many mouths to feed already. Yeah, Greypaw whispered into Firepaw's ears, and some of them are bigger than others. I don't need anyone to care for me, spat Yellowfang, and I'll split open anyone who tries. Friendly, isn't she? Greypaw murmured. Firepaw flicked the tip of his tail in silent agreement. There were muffled meows from the other warriors as they grudgingly recognized the enemy warrior's fighting spirit. Bluestar ignored the murmuring. We shall kill two prey with one blow, as it were. Firepaw, as punishment for breaking the warrior code, it will be your responsibility to care for Yellowfang. You will hunt for her and tend her wounds. You will fetch bedding and clear away her dirt. Yes, Bluestar, mewed Firepaw, his head bowed in submission. Clear away her dirt, he thought to himself. Ugh. Mocking yells came from Dustpaw and Sandpaw. Good idea, hissed Dustpaw. Firepaw had better get good at cracking fleas. And hunting, added Sandpaw. That sack of bones is going to need feeding up. Enough, Bluestar interrupted them. I hope Firepaw will find no shame in caring for Yellowfang. She is a healer, and she is his elder. For those reasons alone, he should respect her. She shot a sharp glance at Dustpaw and Sandpaw. And there is no humiliation in caring for another cat when she is unable to take care of herself. The meeting is over. I would like to speak with my senior warriors alone now. With that, she jumped down from the high rock and marched toward her den. Lionheart followed her. The other clan cats had begun to move away from the high rock. One or two congratulated Firepaw on being chosen as Bluestar's apprentice. Others mockingly wished him luck looking after Yellowfang. Firepaw felt so dazed by Bluestar's announcement that he just nodded blankly. Longtail padded up to him. The V-shaped nick that Firepaw had cut into the tip of his ear still showed. The young warrior drew back his whiskers into an ugly snarl. Well, I hope you'll think twice about bringing strays back into the camp next time, he sneered. Like I said, outsiders always bring trouble. Alright, let me just get a drink of water before we read Chapter 9. I would cut this out, but I think you really need to hear that. Like, you really, really need to hear that. Chapter 9. I'd go and see Yellowfang if I were you, whispered Greypaw, as Longtail strode away. She doesn't look very happy. Firepaw glanced over at the old she-cat. She was still lying beside the high rock. Greypaw was right. She was glaring at him. Well, here goes, he mewed. Wish me luck. You'll need the whole of StarClan on your side for this one, answered Greypaw. Call out if you need a hand. She looks like she's gonna get you. I'll sneak up behind her and whack her on the head with a stiff rabbit. Firepaw purred with amusement and trotted off toward Yellowfang. His cheerfulness quickly evaporated as he neared the injured queen. The old cat was clearly in a terrible mood. She hissed a warning in Shoulder's teeth. Stop right there, kitty pet. Firepaw sighed. It seemed he was in for a fight. He was still hungry and beginning to feel tired. He longed to curl up in his nest for an afternoon nap. The last thing he wanted was to argue with this pitiful clump of fur and teeth. You can call me what you like, he mewed wearily. I'm just following Bluestar's orders. You are a kitty pet, though, aren't you? Yellowfang wheezed. She's tired, too, Firepaw thought. There was less fire in her voice, although her spite was as strong as ever. I used to live with 2 legs when I was a kitten, Firepaw replied calmly. Your mother a kitty pet? Your father a kitty pet? Yes, they were. Firepaw looked down at the ground, feeling resentment burn inside him. It was bad enough that members of his own clan still viewed him as an outsider. He clearly didn't have to answer to this foul-tempered prisoner. Yellowfang seemed to take his silence as an invitation to go on. Kitty pet blood is not the same as warrior blood. Why don't you run home to your 2 legs now instead of looking after me? It's humiliating after being fussed over by a lone-born cat like you. Firepaw's patience ran out. He snarled. You'd still feel humiliated if I were warrior-born. You'd feel ashamed whether I was a precious cat from your own clan or a wretched 2-leg that picked you up off the ground. He lashed his tail from side to side. It's the fact that you need to rely on any cat that you find so humiliating. Yellowfang stared at him, her orange eyes very wide. Firepaw carried on furiously. You're just going to have to get used to being cared for until you are well enough to look after yourself, you spiteful old bone bag. I'm going to use that insult. You spiteful old bone bag. He stopped as Yellowfang began to make a low, harsh, wheezing sound. Alarmed, Firepaw took a step toward her. The she-cat was trembling all over, and her eyes had narrowed into tiny slits. Was she having some kind of fit? Look, I didn't mean, he began before he suddenly realized that she was laughing. She mewed, a purr rumbling up from deep inside her chest. Firepaw didn't know what to do. You have spirit, kitty pet, Yellowfang croaked, stopping at last. Now, I'm tired and my leg hurts. I need sleep and something to put on this wound. Go and find that pretty little medicine cat of yours and ask her for some herbs. I think you'll find a goldenrod poultice will help. And while you're at it, I wouldn't mind a few poppy seeds to chew on. The pain is killing me." Stunned by her change of mood, Firepaw turned quickly and sprinted towards Spotted Leaf's den. He had never been in this part of the camp before. With his ears pricked, he padded through a cool green tunnel of ferns that led into a small grassy clearing. A tall rock stood at one side, split down the middle by a crack wide enough for a cat to make its den inside. Out of this opening trotted Spotted Leaf. As usual, she looked bright-eyed and friendly, her dappled coat gleaming with 100 shades of amber and brown. Firepaw shyly mewed a greeting and reeled off Yellowfang's list of herb and seeds. "I've got most of those in my den," replied Spotted Leaf. "I'll fetch some marigold leaves, too. If she dresses her wound with that, it'll keep off any infection. Wait here." "Thanks," Firepaw mewed as the medicine cat disappeared back into her den. He strained his eyes, trying to catch a glimpse of her inside, but the den was too dark to see anything. He could only hear the sound of rustling and the smell of heady scents of unfamiliar herbs. I swear to God, it's pronounced herbs, but fine, I'll say it's herbs. Fucking dumbass. Spotted Leaf emerged from the gloom and dropped a bundle folded in leaves by Firepaw's feet. "Tell Yellowfang to go easy on the poppy seeds. I don't want her to deaden the pain entirely. A little pain can be useful, as it will help me judge how well she is healing." Firepaw nodded and picked up the herbs with his teeth. "Thanks, Spotted Leaf." He mewed through a mouthful of leaves, then headed back through the fern tunnel into the main clearing. Tigerclaw was sitting outside the warrior's den, watching him closely. As Firepaw trotted over to Yellowfang carrying the herbs, he could feel the amber-eyed stare burning into the fur on the back of his neck. He turned his head and looked at Tigerclaw curiously. The warrior narrowed his eyes and looked away. Firepaw dropped a bundle beside Yellowfang. "Good," she meowed. "Now, before you leave me in peace, find me something to eat. I'm starving." The sun had risen 3 times since Yellowfang had entered the camp. Firepaw had woke early and nudged Graypaw, who was still asleep beside him, his nose tucked under his thick tail. "Wake up," Firepaw mewed, "or you'll be late for training." Graypaw lifted his head sleepily and growled in reluctant agreement. Firepaw prodded Ravenpaw. The black cat opened his eyes immediately and leaped to his feet. "What is it?" he mewed, looking around wildly. "Calm down, Ravenpaw. It's time for training soon," Firepaw soothed. Dustpaw and Sandpaw began to stir too in their mossy nests on the far side of the den. Firepaw stood up and pushed his way out of the ferns. The morning was warm. Firepaw could see a deep blue sky through the leaves and branches that overhung the camp. Today, however, a heavy dew glistened on the fern fronds and sparkled on the grass. Firepaw sniffed the air. Greenleaf was drawing to a close, and soon it would start to feel colder. He lay down and rolled in the earth beside the tree stump, stretching his legs and tipping his head back to rub it on the cool ground. Then he flipped over onto his side and looked across the clearing to see if Yellowfang was awake yet. She had been given a resting place at the other end of the fallen tree where the elders gathered to eat. Her nest lay tucked against its mossy trunk, out of hearing of the elders, but in full view of the warrior's den across the clearing. Firepaw could just see a mound of pale gray fur, rising and falling in time to a gentle rumble of sleep. Graypaw trotted out of the den behind him, followed by Sandpaw and Dustpaw. Ravenpaw appeared last with a nervous glance around the clearing before he emerged fully into the open. "Another day looking after that mangy old flea bag, eh, Firepaw?" mewed Dustpaw. "I bet you wish you were out training with us." Firepaw sat up and shook the dust from his fur. He wasn't going to let himself get annoyed by Dustpaw's taunts. "Don't worry, Firepaw," murmured Graypaw. "Bluestar will have you back in training before long." "Perhaps she thinks a kitty pet is better off staying in camp tending to the sick," mewed Sandpaw rudely, tossing her sleek ginger head and throwing him a scornful look. Firepaw decided to ignore her barbed comments. "What is White Storm teaching you today, Sandpaw?" he mewed. "We're doing battle training today. He's going to teach me how a real warrior fights," Sandpaw replied proudly. "Lionheart's taking me to the great sycamore,"
mused Graypaw, to practice my climbing. I'd best go. He'll be waiting.
I'll come with you to the top of the ravine, mused Firepaw. I have to catch breakfast for Yellowfang. Coming, Ravenpaw? Tiger Claw must have something planned for you. Ravenpaw sighed and nodded, then followed Graypaw and Firepaw as they trotted out of camp. Even though his injury was completely healed, he seemed to have a little enthusiasm for warrior training. Here, mused Firepaw. He dropped a large mouse and a chaffinch onto the ground beside Yellowfang. About time, she growled. Yellowfang had still been sleeping when Firepaw had entered the camp after his hunting trip, but the smell of fresh kip must have awoken her, for now she had pulled herself into a sitting position. She dropped her head and hungrily gulped down Firepaw's offerings. She had developed a massive appetite as her strength returned. Her wound was healing well, but her temper remained as fierce and unpredictable as ever. She finished her meal and complained. The base of my tail itches like fury, but I can't reach it. Give it a wash, will you? With an inward shudder, Firepaw crouched down and set to work. As he cracked the plump fleas between his teeth, he noticed a gang of small kits. Small kit gang! Small kit gang! Tumbling in the dusty earth nearby. They were mauling each other and play fighting, sometimes quite viciously. Yellowfang, who would close her eyes as Firepaw groomed her, half opened one eye to observe the kits as they played. To his surprise, Firepaw felt her spine stiffen beneath his teeth. He listened for a moment to the tiny yelps and squeaks of the kits. "Feel my teeth broken, Star," mewed one small tabby. He was leaped onto the back of a little gray and white kit, who was pretending to be the Shadow Clan leader. The two kits bundled toward the high rock. Suddenly the gray and white kit gave a mighty heave and flung the tabby from his back. With a startled squeak, the little tabby cannoned the Yellowfang's sides. Instantly, the old she-cat leaped to her feet, fur on end, spitting violently. "Stay away from me, you scrap of fur!" she hissed. The tabby kit took one look at the furious cat, turned tail, and ran. He hid himself behind a tabby queen, who was staring furiously across the clearing at Yellowfang. The gray and white kit froze where he stood. Then, paw by paw, he cautiously backed away toward the safety of the nursery. Yellowfang's reaction shocked Firepaw. He thought he'd seen her at her most vicious when they fought after their first meeting, but her eyes burned with a new rage now. "I think the kits are finding it hard being confined to camp," he mewed cautiously. "They're getting restless." "I don't care how restless they are," growled Yellowfang. "Just keep them away from me." "Don't you like kits?" Firepaw asked, curious in spite of himself. "Did you never have kits of your own?" "Don't you know medicine cats don't have kits?" hissed Yellowfang furiously. "But I heard you were a warrior before that," Firepaw ventured. "I have no kits," Yellowfang spat. She snatched her tail away from him and sat up. "Anyway," her voice suddenly lowered, and she sounded almost wistful, "accidents seem to happen to kits when I'm around them." Her orange eyes clouded with emotion. She laid her chin flat on her forepaws and stared ahead. Firepaw watched her shoulders sink as she released a long, silent sigh. Firepaw looked at her cautiously. What could she mean? Was the old she-cat being serious? It was hard to tell. Yellowfang seemed to swing from mood to mood so quickly. He shrugged to himself and went on with the grooming. "There are a couple of ticks I couldn't pull out," he told her when she had finished. "I should hope you didn't even try, you idiot," she snapped Yellowfang. "I don't want any tick heads embedded in my rear, thank you very much. Ask Spotted Leaf for a little mouse bile to rub on them. A splash of that in their breathing holes should loosen their grip, and they'll soon loosen their grip." "I'll get some now," Firepaw offered. He was glad of a chance to get away from the grumpy cat for a while, and it was certainly no hardship to go and see Spotted Leaf again. He walked toward the fern tunnel. Cats crossed the clearing around him, carrying sticks and twigs in their teeth. While he had been grooming Yellowfang, the camp had grown active. It had been like this every day since Blue Star had announced WindClan's disappearance. The queens were weaving twigs and leaves into a dense green wall around the sides of the nursery, making sure that the narrow entrance was the only way in and out of the bramble patch. Other cats were working at the edges of the camp, filling in any spaces in the thick undergrowth. Even the elders were busy, scraping out a hole in the ground. Warriors filed steadily past.
piling pieces of fresh kill beside them, ready to be stored in the newly dug hole. There was an air of quiet concentration, a determination to make the clan as secure and well supplied as possible. If ShadowClan made a move on their territory, ThunderClan would shelter inside the camp. They would not let themselves be driven from their hunting grounds as easily as WindClan had been. Darkstripe, Longtail, Willowpelt, and Dustpaw were waiting as silently at the camp entrance, their eyes fixed on the opening to the gorse tunnel. A patrol was just returning, dusty and paw-sore. As soon as the warriors entered the camp, Darkstripe and his companions approached and exchanged words with them. Then they slipped quickly out of the camp. ThunderClan's borders were not being left unguarded for a moment. Firepaw headed down the fern tunnel that led to Spotleaf's den. As he entered the clearing, he could see Spotleaf was preparing some sweet-smelling herbs. "Can I have some mouse bile for Yellowfang's ticks?" Firepaw mewed. "In a moment," replied Spotleaf, pawing 2 piles of herbs together and mixing the fragrant heap with one delicately extended claw. "Busy?" Firepaw asked, settling down on a warm patch of earth. "I want to be prepared for any casualties," Spotleaf murmured, glancing up at him with her clear amber eyes. Firepaw met her gaze for a moment, then looked away, an uncomfortable feeling prickling his fur. Spotleaf turned her attention back to the herbs. Firepaw waited, happy to sit quietly and watch her at work. "Right," she mewed at last. "What is it you wanted? Mouse bile?" "Yes, please." Firepaw stood up and stretched each back leg in turn. The sun had warmed his fur and made him feel sleepy. Spotleaf bounded into her den and brought something out. She held it gingerly in her mouth. It was a small wad of moss dangling on the end of the thin strip of bark. She passed it to Firepaw. He tasted her warm, sweet breath as he took the bark strip between his teeth. "The moss is soaked in bile," Spotleaf explained. "Don't get any in your mouth, or you'll have a foul taste for days. Press it onto ticks and then wash your paws in a stream, not with your tongue." Firepaw nodded and trotted back to Yellowfang, feeling suddenly cheerful and tingling with energy. "Hold still," he mewed to the old she-cat. Carefully he used his forepaws to press the moss onto each tick. "You may as well clear away my dirt now your paws are already foul," she meowed when she had finished. "I'm going to take a nap," she yawned, revealing her blackened and broken teeth. The warmth of the day was making her sleepy too. "Then you can go and do whatever it is you apprentices do," she murmured. When Firepaw had cleared away Yellowfang's dirt, he left her dozing and made his way to the gorse tunnel. He was keen to get to the stream and rinse his paws. "Firepaw!" A voice called from the side of the clearing. Firepaw turned. It was Halftail. "Where are you off to?" meowed the old cat curiously. "You ought to be helping with the preparations." "I've just been putting mouse bile on Yellowfang's ticks," replied Firepaw. Amusement flickered through Halftail's whiskers. "So now you're off to the nearest stream. Well, don't come back without fresh kill. We need as much as we can find." "Yes, Halftail," Firepaw replied. He made his way out of the camp and up the side of the ravine. He trotted down to the stream where he and Greypaw had hunted on the day he found Yellowfang. Without hesitating, he jumped down into the cold, clear water. It came up to his haunches and wet his belly fur. The shock made him gasp, and he shivered. A rustle in the bushes above him made him look up, although the familiar scent had reached his nose told him there was nothing to be alarmed about. "What are you doing in there?" Greypaw and Ravenpaw were standing looking at him as if he were mad. "Mouse bile," Firepaw grimaced. "Don't ask. Where are Lionheart and Tigerclaw?" "They've got to join the next patrol," answered Greypaw. "They ordered us to spend the rest of the afternoon hunting." "Halftail told me the same thing," Firepaw mewed, flinching as a chilly current of water rushed around his paws. "Everyone's busy back at camp. You'd think we were about to be attacked at any moment." He climbed up onto the bank, dripping. "Who says we won't be?" mewed Ravenpaw, his eyes flicking from side to side as if he expected an enemy patrol to leap out of the bushes at any time. Firepaw looked at the heap of fresh kill that was piled beside the 2 apprentices. "Looks like you done all right today," he mewed. "Yeah," mewed Grandpa proudly. "And we still got the rest of the afternoon to hunt. You want to join us?" "You bet," Firepaw purred,
gave himself a final shake, and then bounded into the undergrowth after his friends. Firepaw could tell that the cats back at camp were impressed with the amount of prey the three apprentices had managed to catch during their afternoon hunt. They were welcomed back with high tails and friendly nuzzles. It took them 4 journeys to carry their bumper catch. Bumper catch! Bumper! Hey, that's pretty good. Hey, how was your day? Oh, it was pretty bumper. Alright, man, that's pretty cool. To the storage hole the elders had dug. Lionheart and Tigerclaw had just returned with their patrols as Firepaw, Greypaw, and Ravenpaw carried their last load into camp. Well done, you 3, yelled Lionheart. I hear you've been busy. The store is almost full. You might as well add that last lot to the pile of fresh kill for tonight, and take some of it back to your den with you. You deserve a feast. The 3 apprentices flicked their tails with delight. I hope you've not been neglecting Yellowfang with all this hunting, Firepaw, Tigerclaw growled warningly. Firepaw shook his head impatiently, eager to get away. He was starving. He had obeyed the warrior code this time, and not eaten a morsel while he was hunting for the clan, nor had Greypaw or Ravenpaw. They trotted away and dropped the last of their catch on the fresh kill that already lay on the center of the clearing. Then each of them took a piece and carried it back to the tree stump. The den was empty. Where are Dustpaw and Sandpaw? Asked Ravenpaw. They must still be out on patrol, Firepaw guessed. Good, meowed Grandpa. Peace and quiet. They ate their fill and lay back to wash. The cool evening air was welcome after the heat of day. Hey, guess what? Mewed Greypaw suddenly. Ravenpaw managed to squeeze a compliment out of Tigerclaw this morning. Really? Firepaw gasped. What on earth did you do to please Tigerclaw? Fly? Well, Ravenpaw began shyly, looking at his paws. I caught a crow. How'd you manage that? Firepaw mewed, impressed. It was an old one, Ravenpaw admitted modestly. But it was huge, added Greypaw. Even Tigerclaw couldn't find fault with that. He'd been in such a bad mood since Taboo Star took you on as her apprentice. He licked his paw thoughtfully for a moment. Hang on, make that since Lionheart was deputy. He's just worried about ShadowClan and the extra patrols, mewed Ravenpaw hastily. You should not try to annoy him. You should try not to annoy him. The conversation was interrupted by a loud yowl from the other side of the clearing. Oh no, Firepaw groaned, getting to his paws. I forgot to take Yellowfang her share. You wait here, mewed Greypaw, leaping up. I'll take her something. No, I better go, Firepaw protested. This is my punishment, not yours. No one will notice, argued Greypaw. They're all busy eating. You know me, quiet as a mouse, quick as a fish. Wait here. Firepaw sat down again, unable to hide his relief. He watched his friend trot away from the tree stump to the pile of fresh kill. As if he were carrying out orders, Greypaw confidently picked out 2 of the juiciest looking mice. Quickly he began to pad across the clearing toward Yellowfang. Stop, Greypaw! A loud growl rumbled from the entrance of Warrior's Den. Tigerclaw strode out and marched over to Greypaw. Where are you taking those mice? He demanded. With a sinking feeling in his stomach, Firepaw watched, helpless, for the tree stump. Beside him, Ravenpaw froze mid-chew and crouched over his meal with his eyes wider than ever. Greypaw dropped the mice and shuffled his paws uncomfortably. Not helping young Firepaw by feeding that greedy traitor over there, are you? Firepaw watched Greypaw study his paws for a moment. Finally replied, I was just feeling hungry. I was going to take them off and eat them by myself. If I let that pair get a look in, you hissed at Firepaw and Ravenpaw. They'll leave you with nothing but bones and fur. Oh, really? Mewed Tigerclaw. Well, if you're so hungry, you might as well eat them here and now. But, Greypaw began, looking up at the senior warrior in alarm. Now! Growled Tigerclaw. Greypaw bent his head quickly and began to eat the mice. He demolished the first one in a couple of bites and swallowed it quickly. The second mouse took longer for him to eat. Firepaw he never managed to swallow it, and his own stomach clenched his sympathy. But eventually Greypaw gave a final difficult gulp, and the last bit of mouse disappeared. Better now? Asked Tigerclaw, his voice smooth with mock sympathy. Much, replied Sympathy, stifling a burp. Good. Tigerclaw stalked off again, back to his den. Graypaw slunk uncomfortably back to Firepaw and Ravenpaw. Thanks, Graypaw. Firepaw mewed gratefully, nudging his friend's soft fur. That was quick thinking. The noise of Yellowfang's yowl rose into the air once more. Firepaw sighed and got to his paws. He would make sure he took her enough to see her through the night. He wanted to turn in early. His stomach was full and his paws were tired. Are you okay, Graypaw? He asked as he turned to leave. Oh, moaned Graypaw. He was hunched into a low crouch, squinting with pain. I've eaten too much. Go and see Spotted Leaf, Firepaw suggested. I'm sure she'll find something to help. I hope so, agreed Graypaw, tottering slowly away. Firepaw wanted to watch him go, until another angry yowl from Yellowfang sent him sprinting across the clearing. My voice for Ravenpaw might be confusing you. It's this one. He's not a girl. I just needed I need like a voice that demonstrated like scaredy cat. I needed something like that, so I try and do that. Chapter 10. By the following morning, a thin drizzle shook the treetops, and dripped down into the camp. Firepaw woke up feeling damp. It had been an uncomfortable night. He stood up and shook himself vigorously, fluffing out his fur. Then he left the apprentice's den and trotted across the clearing to Yellowfang's nest. Yellowfang was just stirring. She lifted her head and squinted at Firepaw as he approached. My bones ache this morning. Has it been raining all night? Since just after moon high, Firepaw replied. He reached out and prodded her mossy nest cautiously. Your bedding is soaking wet. Why don't you move nearer to the nursery? It's more sheltered there. What? And be kept awake all night by those mewling kits? I'd rather get wet, Yellowfang growled. Firepaw watched her circle stiffly on her mossy bed. Then at least let me fetch you some dry bedding, he offered, keen to drop the subject of kits if it upset the old she-cat so much. Thank you, Firepaw, replied Yellowfang quietly, settling down again. Firepaw felt stunned. He wondered if Yellowfang was feeling all right. It was the first time she had thanked him for anything, and the first time she had not called him kitty pet. Well, don't just stand there like a startled squirrel. Go and fetch some moss, she snapped. Firepaw's whiskers twitched with amusement. This was more like the Yellowfang he was used to. He nodded and sprinted off. He almost crashed into Speckletail in the middle of the clearing. This was the queen who had watched Yellowfang's angry outburst at the tabby kit the day before. Sorry, Speckletail, Firepaw mewed. Are you on your way to see Yellowfang? What would I want with that unnatural creature? Replied Speckletail crossly. Actually, it's you I was looking for. Bluestar wants to see you. Firepaw hurried toward the high rock in Bluestar's den. Bluestar was sitting outside, her head bobbing rhythmically as she licked the gray fur below her throat. She paused when she noticed Firepaw. How is Yellowfang today? She meowed. Her bedding is wet, so I was going to fetch her more. Firepaw replied. I'll ask one of the queens to see to that. Firepaw gave her chest another lick, and then eyed Firepaw carefully. Is she fit enough to hunt for herself yet? She asked. I don't think so, Firepaw meowed, but she can walk well enough now. I see, meowed Bluestar. She looked thoughtful for a moment. It's time for you to return to your training, Firepaw, but you'll need to work hard to make up for the time you have lost. Great! Thank you, Bluestar, Firepaw stammered. You will go out with Tigerclaw, Graypaw, and Ravenpaw this morning, Bluestar continued. I've asked Tigerclaw to assess the warrior skills of all our apprentices. Don't worry about Yellowfang. I'll make sure someone sees to her while you are gone. Firepaw nodded. Now, join your companions, Bluestar ordered. I expect they're waiting for you. Thank you, Bluestar, Firepaw mewed. He turned with a flick of his tail and darted towards his den. Bluestar was right. Graypaw and Ravenpaw were both waiting for him by their favorite tree stump. Graypaw looked stiff and uncomfortable, his long fur clumped by the dampness of the air. Ravenpaw was pacing around the tree stump, lost in thought, and the tip of his white tail twitching. So you're joining us today, Graypaw called as Firepaw approached. Some day, huh? He shook himself roughly to get rid of the clinging wetness. Yes, Bluestar told me that Tigerclaw is going to assess us today. Are Sandpaw and Dustpaw coming too? White Storm and Darkstripe took them out on warrior patrol. I suppose Tiger Cloud's going to look at them later, Graypaw answered. Come on, we should get going, urged Ravenpaw. He had stopped chasing and now hovered beside them anxiously. Fine by me, meowed Graypaw. Hopefully some exercise will warm me up a bit. The three cats trotted through the gorse track and out of the camp. They hurried toward the sandy hollow. Tigerclaw had not arrived, so they hung around in the shelter of a pine tree, their fur fluffed up against the chill. Are you worried about the assessment? Firepaw asked Ravenpaw, as the young cat padded backward and forward with quick, nervous paw steps. There's no need to be. You're Tigerclaw's apprentice after all. When he reports back to Bluestar, he's going to want to tell her how good you are. You can never tell with Tigerclaw, mewed Ravenpaw, still pacing. For goodness sake, sit down, Graypaw grumbled. At this rate, you'll be worn out before we begin. By the time Tigerclaw arrived, the sky had changed. The clouds looked less like thick gray fur and more like the soft white balls of down that queens used to line the nests of their newborns. Blue skies couldn't be far behind, but the breeze that brought the softer clouds carried a fresh chill. Tigerclaw greeted them briskly and launched straight into the exercise details. Lionheart and I have spent the last few weeks trying to teach you how to hunt decently, he meowed. Today you'll have the chance to show me how much you have learned. Each of you will take a different route and hunt as much prey as possible, and whatever you catch will be added to the supplies in the camp. The three apprentices looked at one another, nervous and excited. Firepaw felt his heart begin to beat faster at the prospect of a challenge. Ravenpaw, you will follow the trail beyond the great sycamore as far as the snake rocks. That should be easy enough for your pitiful skills. Oof. You, Graypaw, Tigerclaw continued, will take the route along the stream as far as Thunderpath. Great, neighed Graypaw. Wet paws for me. Tigerclaw's dares silenced him. And finally you, Firepaw. What a shame your great mentor couldn't be here today, when it's your opponents for herself. You shall take the route through the tall pines, past the tree-cut place to the woods beyond. Firepaw nodded, frankly tracing the route in his head. And remember, Tigerclaw finished, fixing them all with his pale-eyed stare, I will be watching all of you. Ravenpaw was the first to sprint away toward the snake rocks. Tigerclaw took a different track into the woods, leaving Graypaw and Firepaw alone in the hollow, trying to guess who Tigerclaw would follow first. I don't know why he thinks Snake Rocks is an easy route, mewed Graypaw. That place is crawling with adders. Birds and mice stay away from there because there are so many snakes. Ravenpaw will have to spend his whole time trying not to get bitten, Firepaw agreed. Oh, it'll be okay, mewed Graypaw. Not even an adder would be fast enough to catch Ravenpaw at the moment. He's so jumpy. I'd better get going. See you back here later on. Look. Graypaw raced off toward the stream. Firepaw paused to sniff the air, then bounded up the side of the hollow and began to head for the tall pines. It felt strange to be going in this direction, toward the two-leg place he had been raised in. Cautiously, Firepaw crossed the narrow path into the pine forest. He looked through the straight rows of trees, across the flat forest floor, alert for the sight and scent of prey. A movement caught his eye. It was a mouse, scrabbling through the pine needles. Remembering his first lesson, Firepaw dropped into the stalking position, keeping his weight in his haunches, his paws light on the ground. The technique worked perfectly. The mouse didn't detect Firepaw until his final leap. He caught it with one paw and killed it swiftly. Then he buried it, so they could pick it up on his return journey. Firepaw traveled a little farther into the tall pines. The ground here was deeply rutted by the tracks of huge two-legged monster that tore down the trees. Firepaw took a deep breath, his mouth open. The monster's acid breath had not touched the air here for a while. Firepaw followed the deep tracks, jumping across the ruts. They were half filled with rain, which made him feel thirsty. He was tempted to stop and take a few mouthfuls, but he hesitated. One lap of that muddy trench water, and he'd taste the monster's foul-smelling tracks for days. He decided to wait. Perhaps there would be a rainwater puddle beyond the tall pines. He hurried onward through the trees and crossed the two-leg path on the far boundary. He was back amid the thick undergrowth of oak woods. He moved onward until he found a puddle and lapped up a few mouthfuls of the fresh water. Firepaw's fur began to prickle with some extra awareness.
He recognized sounds and scents familiar from his old watching place on the fence post, and knew instantly where he was. These were the woods that bordered the two-leg place. He must be very close to his old home now. Ahead, Firepaw could smell two legs and hear their voices, loud and raucous like clouds. Crows. Cows. Crows. It was a group of young two-legs playing in the woods. Firepaw crouched and peered ahead through the ferns. The sounds were distant enough to be safe. He changed direction, skirting the noises, making sure he was not seen. Firepaw stayed alert and watchful, but not just for two legs. Tiger Claw might be somewhere nearby. He thought he heard a twig snap in the bushes behind him. He sniffed the air, but smelled nothing new. Was he being watched now? He wondered. Out of the corner of his eye, Firepaw sensed movement. At first he thought it was Tiger Claw's dark brown fur, but then he saw a flash of white. He stopped, crouched, and inhaled deeply. The smell was unfamiliar. It was a cat, but not a ThunderClan cat. Firepaw felt his fur bristles with the instincts of a clan warrior. He would have to chase the intruder out of ThunderClan territory. Firepaw watched the creature moving through the undergrowth. He could see its outline clearly as it skittered between the ferns. Firepaw waited for it to wander nearer. He crouched lower, his tail waving back and forth in slow rhythm. As the black and white cat neared, Firepaw rocked his haunches from side to side as he prepared to spring. One more heartbeat, then he leaped. The black and white cat jumped into the air, terrified, and raced away through the trees. Firepaw gave chase. It's a kitty pet, he thought as he raced through the undergrowth, smelling its fierce scent. In my territory! He was closing in rapidly on the fleeing animal. It had slowed its headlong rush, preparing to scramble up the wide, mossy trunk of the fallen tree. With the blood roaring in his ears, Firepaw leaped onto its back in a single bound. Firepaw could feel the cat struggling beneath him as he gripped on with all his claws. It let out a desperate and terrified yowl. Firepaw released his grip and backed away. The black and white cat cringed at the foot of the fallen tree, trembling, and looked up at him. Firepaw lifted his nose and felt a ripple of disgust at the intruder's easy surrender. The soft, plump house cat, with its round eyes and narrow face, looked very different from the lean, broad-headed cats that Firepaw looked with now. And yet something about this cat seemed familiar. Firepaw stared harder. He sniffed, drawing in the other cat's scent. I don't recognize the smell, he thought, searching his memory. Then it came to him. Smudge! He meowed out loud. How do you know my name? Stammered Smudge, still crouching. It's me, Firepaw meowed. The house cat looked confused. We were kittens together. I lived in the garden next to you, Firepaw insisted. Rusty, mewed Smudge in disbelief. Is that you? Did you find the wild cats again, or are you living with new house folk? You must be, if you're still alive. I'm called Firepaw now, Firepaw meowed. He relaxed his shoulders and let his fur fall flat into his sleek orange pelt. Smudge relaxed too. His ears pricked up. Firepaw, he echoed, amused. Well, Firepaw, it looks like your new house folk don't feed you enough. You certainly weren't this scrawny last time we met. I don't need two legs to feed me, Firepaw replied. I've got a whole forest of food to eat. Two legs? House folk. That's what the clans call them. Smudge looked bewildered for a second, then his expression changed to one of complete astonishment. You mean you're really living with the wildcats? Yes, Firepaw paused. You know, you smell different, unfamiliar. Unfamiliar? Smudge echoed. He sniffed. I suppose you're used to the smell of those wildcats now. Firepaw shook his head as if to clear his mind. But we were kittens together. I should know your smell like I'd know the smell of my birth mother. Then Firepaw remembered. Smudge had passed 6 moons. No wonder he looked so soft and fat and smelled so strange. You've been to the cutter, he gasped. I mean the vet. Smudge shrugged his plump back shoulders. So? He mewed. Firepaw was speechless. So Bluestar was right. Come on then. What's it like, living wild? Smudge demanded. Is it as good as you thought you'd be? Firepaw thought for a moment about last night, sleeping in a damp den. He thought about Mouse Bile and clearing away Yellowfang's dirt, trying to please both Lionheart and Tigerclaw at once during training. He remembered the teasing he suffered about his kitty pet blood. Then he remembered the thrill of his first catch, of charging through the forest in pursuit of a squirrel, and of warm evenings beneath the stars, sharing tongues with his friends. I know who I am now, he mused simply. Smudge tipped his head to one side and stared at Firepot, clearly confused. I should be getting home, he mewed. Mealtime soon. Go carefully, Smudge. Firepot leaned forward and gave his old friend an affectionate lick between the ears. Smudge nuzzled him in return. And stay alert. There may be another cat in the area who is not as fond of kitty pets, I mean, house cats, as I am. Smudge's ears flicked nervously at these words. He looked around cautiously and leaped up the trunk onto the fallen tree. Goodbye, Rusty, he mewed. I'll tell everyone at home that you're okay. Bye, Smudge, meowed Firepot. Enjoy your meal. He watched the white tip of Smudge's tail disappear over the edge of the tree. In the distance he could hear the rattle of dried food being shaken and a two-legged voice calling. Firepot turned, his tail high, and started back toward his own home, sniffing the air as he went. I'll find a finch or two here, he decided. Then I'll catch something else on the way back through the pines. He felt bursting with energy after meeting Smudge and realizing just how lucky he was to live in the clan. He looked up at the branches above him and began to stalk silently across the forest floor, every sense alert. Now he just needed to impress Bluestar and Tireclaw, and the day would be perfect. There's the end of chapter 10. If you enjoyed the first one, I hope you enjoyed this one even more, because got the voices more figured out, the ones that needed some editing. But yeah, we're about halfway through the book. Pretty sure there's like 21, 22 chapters. So yeah, see you later, I guess.